the objectives when it comes to the safety lifecycle and functional safety management is to help us avoid systematic faults. It's also to help us with reducing the potential for random faults. And the reason why we are interested in the systematic side is insidious because things can be designed in badly or not designed in at all. And this can lead us to have hidden, latent failures that can pop up later on and really cause us to have problems. And some of you may be very, very familiar with the HSE, the Health and Safety Executive Study that was done in 1995. And what they did is they looked at accidents involving control systems and safety systems, and what they concluded was that 44% of all the accidents was the primary cause was bad specification. So here again, if the specification is bad, of course the design and implementation is not going to be any better. But also, if we look at the back end, if we look at what happens during installation and commissioning, and also operation and maintenance, you can see there's another 40-odd% that's due to that. And these are all of systematic failures. So again, we have to be very careful when we come to looking at how we design things, how we specify things, how we maintain the installation. All of that has to be looked at carefully. So functional safety management will help us with minimizing the possibility of introducing systematic failures. It governs the whole life cycle, as I said, and it requires us to allocate life cycle responsibilities. In the 2016 edition of 1511, when it was updated, the standard now puts a lot more emphasis on roles and responsibilities and competencies. As we shall see, this is a significant part of trying to manage and avoid the introduction of systematic failures coming into the life cycle. So we need to specify the activities of those who are responsible with procedures. We need to be able to track and make sure that the competency is maintained, that people are trained, and so on. So we need to have records for doing that. And the whole purpose of this, as I've said, is to help us to manage the risk of systematic failures down to an acceptable level. So the idea is that we can spot them quickly enough and we can fix it if we spot them. If we don't do this, then as we get further down the life cycle, it will become more expensive to fix these particular problems. So there are two types. There's the systematic type, but there's also cybersecurity. So cybersecurity was another thing that was introduced in the 2016 edition of 1511. That was clause 8.2.4 that says we need to do a cybersecurity risk assessment on our safety instrumented system, and it steers us towards the 62443 standard, the IEC 62443, and the TR 8409. The reason being is that if you think about cybersecurity, this could be the mother of all common cause, because if our basic process control system can be compromised, then the possibility is that the safety instrumented system could be compromised. And in both cases, if we don't have intrusion detection systems or a means to identify when we've been compromised, we could be sitting there thinking we're fine, but actually we have been compromised until such time as the virus or the malware actually kicks in, and then all of a sudden we find now that we've lost control of the controls of the basic process control system and the safety instrumented system has been disabled. Then we can be in serious trouble. And there have been instances where operators have been sitting at their consoles and all of a sudden they see their cursors moving on their own and start to click on valves. So this has happened, and we have to be vigilant about cybersecurity. So again, these are the two things. Systematic failures, the definition in the standard is it's a failure coming from a direct cause which can be only eliminated by a change in the design, the manufacturing process, operational procedures, documentation and other relevant factors. The other relevant factors are the people, making sure people are properly trained and competent to do the work that's been assigned to them. So again, systematic failures can be reduced by good functional safety management. And yet when I go and talk to many end users, they don't really understand what the functional safety management is all about. And of course, when it comes to functional safety, it's different from the process safety, because of course process safety is looking at the releases, fires, explosions, etc. But functional safety should be focusing on the equipment under control, and in particular the safety instrumented system. So it's important that we understand the role that functional safety plays in the development of the safety instrumented system, because that's what we're relying on as our automatic protection layer when everything else from the BPCS has failed. Managing systematic failures. So there are three elements that come into play. It's what we call the 3 Ps. The 3 Ps are people. Are our people properly trained and competent to do the work? Do they have defined roles and responsibilities? Do they know where their responsibilities begin and end? Because otherwise we can have gaps, and we all know what happens when there are gaps. Things can fall through the cracks. The second one is procedures. Do we have written procedures that are being followed? So again, there's no point having a procedure that isn't being followed. Either the procedure's wrong, in which case it needs to be modified, or we have to enforce the fact that the procedure needs to be followed. So there needs to be administrative controls to make sure that happens. There have been instances of accidents that have occurred, and the classic one, of course, is the BP Texas City in 2005, where they violated their startup procedure, as well as not having a qualified supervisor on hand. So procedures are very important. The third P is paperwork. Do we have a paper trail to prove that we're doing what we said we would do and we can show? So the 3 Ps are fundamentally what comes down to the systematic side of things. And we can apply the same redundancy to this as we would do to equipment. For example, if we have a safety critical piece of equipment that needs careful attention when it comes to testing and calibration, then we might decide that we want a 4 eyes policy. So for example, if the procedure says that the instrument tech goes out, he calibrates it, this is the procedure, then after he's finished doing that, either a senior or a colleague who's suitably qualified and competent goes and checks. That way, if he's made a mistake, it can be spotted and it can be corrected before there's a real problem. So this is the whole purpose of making sure that we have good functional safety management in place.